Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the High Five brought to you by PayProTec. I'm Nate Manahan. I'm going to be your host and your guide as we walk through all the things from The Last Dance. We're going to talk about a little bit of social distancing and specifically when you're a restaurant, you're opening up, and there's been a lot of quandary and questions. We're just going to take a poll from the audience here of whether everyone should wear a mask and how do you do that, when, where, all that things and more. And we're going to finish up with some great sales discussions with our gurus, Danny and Brian, all of that here on the High Five.
The time has come, the questions are set, opinions hide, discussions are led, a show about nothing and everything, it's all the same. We've got sports, entertainment, sales, and marketing. It's time for the High Five. We've got it all covered. It's time for the High Five. We've got it all covered, yeah. The High Five.
That's right, everybody. It's time for the High Five, but I would never do this by myself. Sometimes we have special guests, but today it's the core group, the real starters. We're going to start in Colorado, where Mr. Danny Shard told me that he had Chick-fil-A this weekend, and he is living on a high because a Rocky Mountain High with some Rocky Mountain Chick-fil-A is some of the best things. Mr. Danny Shard, how are you, sir, this morning?
The Chick-fil-A intro, I like that. I did get to have Chick-fil-A Friday afternoon, which is a delicacy. It's the closest one to us is almost 2 hours away. So it was cool to take advantage of that. But it was a gorgeous weekend in Colorado. And it was a great one with the family. Happy Monday, everybody.
Happy Monday, and I'm glad someone had a good-looking weekend because it was gray and disgusting around here and continues to be. And I looked up the weather app this morning for Indianapolis, and it said the next sunny day, and it just said none. And I was like, oh, dear Lord. All right, so on the right-hand shot of the two-shot, he is from a new location from 929 East Center Street, bringing Central Warsaw back into the fold. He is back in the office. He's ready to rock and roll. He's the man, the myth, the legend, the one who will bring us wisdom beyond all of our years because he has 100 extra of them. Mr. Brian Linke, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Nate. I don't know if I could beat that the Chick-fil-A intro. I was actually on the phone with Danny Shard when he was ordering that Chick-fil-A, and I don't know if I've ever heard him happier than he was that day. He was like ecstatic. But and I will let you know that it's been a while since I've been back in this office, and I'm just going to go out there and say it. I got lost getting here.
Oh, well, it is, that whole like 3 miles or whatever from there, from the north side of Warsaw, metropolitan traffic and a little bit. Did you pass any cows on the way in this morning?
There weren't any cows, but there weren't very many cars. I can tell you that. But yeah, it's you know what? It's actually good to be out and about. And I walk in the office, and the first person I see is Tim Callahan. How much better can it get than that? I mean, come on, my day started well.
Absolutely. So let's jump into our first thing. Speaking of the best thing from our weekends, kind of catching up. Hey, it's been we've been a couple days. In fact, Danny wasn't with us on Friday, so it's been several days. Let's talk about what are some of the best things that we saw when it came to our weekend. Let's start with Mr. Brian Linke. What say you?
I think the best thing that I saw, is it the best thing that I saw or best thing I did?
Best thing you did. Best thing, yeah. Best thing you did. What best thing, whatever, saw, did, whatever it was.
Okay, so the best thing I did, I think, was just finally around my house. The weather here yesterday was like nighttime out all day, and it remains that today. But Saturday was a gorgeous day, and spent the day outside the whole day. I actually took my shirt off for a little bit. I put it back on as soon as I saw like a normal person, but got in my pool, freezing, but I still got in it, barbecued, and just had kind of like this summer day for one day out of the 365. So I'll take it.
All right. And Mr. Danny Shard, for you, what was the best thing for you this weekend since you got a little golf in? What else was things you saw this weekend?
Little golf Friday, got to play hooky on Friday. But then Saturday and Sunday was just a total family weekend. Did not golf on Saturday or Sunday, and actually got to go to a 5-year-old's birthday party, which was about 4 houses down from ours. There was a total of 6 kids there, and Bodie was just living it up. I sent some pictures. I don't know if you guys can see on my phone, but he had some friends there, and here's a shot of him on the swing with a couple of girls that are a little older than he is, and he was just living it up. So it was a great weekend, a great birthday party there.
Look at that. The Shard jeans living quickly, sitting there with
Stud.
I mean,
Stud.
It's not bad. It's not bad. Here's another one, and you can see the mountains in the background. It's it was a really cool area that we were at too, and he was living it up. Got to jump on the trampoline. Every 2-year-old's dream day.
that is so awesome. So, I mean, I can't, live up to that anyway compared to that. Brian, yours was somewhat good. You took your shirt off, so you were happy and outside. I'm going to say the best thing for me this weekend is really what our second topic and what we do. And this will be the last Monday where we get to do this. So for 5 weeks of this quarantine, and as the quarantine's kind of coming off and business is kind of moving back, not, it's numbers, but we're spending money. People are figuring out what the new normal is, trying to figure out what's safe and not safe. But we've had a constant for the last 5 weeks. On Sunday night, we had 2 episodes of The Last Dance, and last night was The Last Dance's Last Dance. And gentlemen, let's start with Brian Linke. What did you observe when it came to The Last Dance?
The entire time. I mean, I remember every single one of those games. I mean, I watched every single one of those games. I mean, I don't know how many games I actually missed that Michael Jordan actually played in. But I thought the best part about the entire thing was when they handed him the iPad and he was watching the interviews. Like when Gary Payton was talking, and then Jordan was watching Gary Payton talk about him and how he's going to lock him down, and he did that for 2 games in a row, and then Michael just kind of said, okay, enough with this, and won the last game. But I thought the best part of the show was when he was watching the interviews by Jerry Krause or Gary Payton or whoever it was, where he could react to it. He just started laughing with the Gary Payton thing and just handed the iPad back to the guy who was filming it, I think.
So, Danny, you obviously didn't grow up in the Midwest. Brian was coming into the Midwest at that time, so not growing up here, but being part of it. How much did you know Michael Jordan back in the day? And has this even upped your fandom of him as a person?
Totally. I mean, I watched every game too. In fact, I told my wife last night, I remember vividly that shot of Scotty and Michael. I think they're at the parade. They're both wearing sunglasses there at the end. I'm like, I remember that like it was yesterday, and seeing those guys sitting there. But yeah, I mean, it was a little bittersweet, it ending. I didn't really want The Last Dance to end. We've looked forward to this every Sunday now. It seems like, what was it, for the last 5 weeks? I guess
Yep.
It was. Is it 5 weeks?
It is.
It's on too late. It's on too late Eastern time. I'm falling asleep the whole time. But
well, I fell asleep halfway through the first episode too. I mean, we put Bodie to bed, and then things kind of quiet down in our house. And after a long weekend, I kind of start to teeter off. I can't believe you guys can make it through. There's no chance I'm making it with it started. What's at 9 o'clock your time?
Yep, 9 o'clock.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the other thing is the best. I thought really the best part about the whole thing was, and I remember watching it, was when Steve Kerr got up and did his speech after in Grant Park after they won the title, and he hit the winning shot, and he was like, yeah, you know what, they were going to go to Michael, but you know what, they just decided to go to me. So yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool thing.
That was. And I think one of the things I was thinking about this whole thing, I mean, first of all, it was so fun to see a little bit behind the scenes. And I knew Steve Kerr's story, but this is where they really highlight. I thought they did a really good job talking about his dad being murdered in Beirut. I mean, what a story, being a young.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't remember that.
Me neither.
Yeah. And how cool is it to see it a little behind the scenes? You get to see a little bit of how the sausage is made. And it's like Karl Malone when he came in and hugged Michael after he'd lost that on the bus. And you never see that kind of stuff where they're getting away from the press a little bit and the press gives them a little room. Or the Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, because I'm proud to be from Indianapolis. We took them 7 as hard as we possibly could. Grew up a huge Bulls fan, but also a Pacers fan, torn, living in the middle worlds where Brian is now, and but now fully a Pacers fan and was a huge Reggie Miller fan, and we took them strong. But that line to Michael and Larry Bird, did you guys catch that? Oh, my word. I can't repeat it right now because it has some language in it. But it was to see that, and then him to mock him, say, I hope you can go get your golf game. What do you think, Danny? Larry Bird got a little extra golf time.
That was funny. Speaking of, how about that shot of Larry Bird after Reggie hits that 3 and there's like 0.7 seconds left and the whole place goes bananas except Larry Bird just sits there completely focused, doesn't even make a facial expression because he knows there's still time on the clock. And Jordan almost made that shot. I mean, that was a really cool part of the story.
I think if he does, I think if he doesn't double clutch, it goes in.
Absolutely. I thought that was a really cool part of the story. And then another part that I forgot, which was in the episode 10, I didn't remember Dennis Rodman doing the wrestling thing and just disappearing again for however long. Was it a day, 2 days? Did he miss 2 practices?
Yeah, I didn't remember that either.
I did not remember that. And yeah, I mean, that's a huge deal. And he just didn't even really think about it.
It was absolutely kind of insane. Just, I mean, all the storylines, I mean, the shot of him playing the piano at the end. And he has this incredible, he says, you just got to live in the moment. And let's close with this, but he was sitting there. Obviously, they went on to a little more context with Reinsdorf saying why he couldn't put together and him showing regret that he could not go for 7. Who knows what would have happened. He even admitted he didn't know if they could win it again, whether they could bring the team back together again, but he really did want a chance to try. But he's just sitting there. He's like, man, you just got to live in the moment, enjoy the moment. And I mean, to be sitting in Michael Jordan's sphere of influence and you're sitting there and you're getting that behind the scenes after the biggest, the last time he'll win a world championship. I just thought that was awesome just to see a little bit into his psyche, and that the man, the myth, the legend, who was a complete assassin and his personality certainly was abrasive at times, he had those moments where he realized who he was as a person and he could, just kind of take a step back and enjoy the moment.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yep. I didn't. I mean, here's right here on MSN. Kerr's incredible story gets its due on The Last Dance.
Right.
I mean, he did not get enough notoriety with what he had done on that team. I mean, granted, it's tough to come out of the show or the shadow of Michael Jordan, but pretty cool to see him kind of get some clout for that.
Well, the thing about him is I mean, he was recruited by one school, right? And he took the scholarship offer from Arizona right off the bat just because he didn't get any more. And then he got there and just became a much better player, and then became a clutch player in the NBA. And yep. Yeah, I think that The Last Dance was a really good thing for Steve Kerr.
Yeah,
it was. How about the fact that there's zero dialogue between Reinsdorf and Jordan? Like, he had never even heard him talk about why they didn't come back. He had his assumptions. That was it.
Right.
Like, how is that even possible with someone that literally made this franchise in this city what it was? And there's just not even any communication on that at all. I thought that was crazy.
I mean,
well, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Jordan thought that he was that he felt he was kind of being slighted by both of those guys, Reinsdorf and Krause, I think. He's like, hey, you know what? I'm doing all this. I need you guys to reach out to me, and it was just kind of like a battle between the two of them.
And
like
he
says,
says,
like you and me, Dan, kind of like you and I.
And he says, Jerry Krause told Phil, look, if you go 82-0, you don't have a job next year.
Right.
That's crazy to me.
The thing about them coming back for a seventh try, though, is Jordan was just exhausted by the end of the whole thing. Pippen was hurt. I mean, I'm just not sure they would have been able to. We'll never know, but I just don't know if they would have been able to string it together for a full 82 games to come back and win. I just think that they were kind of at the end of their rope. I mean, again, it would have been nice, but they went out on a winning note and. The rest is history.
But you gotta love that. I mean, his competitive fire still exists. Like he's still, you could tell, irritated that they didn't get a chance because he would have done it, right? Had everybody, were they all given the opportunity, to come back for one final year and win a seventh? He wanted it. He still wants it.
Well, I think if he would have come back, I think he could have talked everybody else into coming back.
I agree.
But I don't think they didn't keep anybody though, did they?
Not Kukoc was still there at the end on that one.
Yeah.
And,
okay, but I mean,
Kerr
wasn't there.
I think Bushler,
wasn't there.
They traded Kerr. They traded Pippen. Pippen eventually gets his $88 million. And it shows a lack to me of leadership of Jerry Reinsdorf. I mean, it's a difference between being an owner and a leader. And he was only thinking, how could I make the most money in the next 10 years or decade? And I think he ended up by making that long-term. And I'm all for it. I coach about, making long-term decisions. But when you have to realize when you're in a special situation, and that was not a situation where he had to say, how am I going to win this? Because he hasn't won again. 22 years left. Michael's just now figuring out why Reinsdorf just felt like they couldn't do it. And what have they done? They've gone to 7 playoffs. They've only won 2 playoff series. I was watching SVP afterwards last night, and he was talking with Bob Costas, and they're saying, look, absolutely nothing has worked for this team. They've had 7 top 10 lottery picks, and only 2 of them have ever even made an all-star game, Rose and Noah, and neither of them are going on to replace what was with Michael. You had to take that chance in there. And hindsight's 2020, but as leadership, you've got to say, okay, when there is something special going on, it has its chance to burn it out at times, because I think he lost out on hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, because he could have gotten 2 or 3 more years out of that. He may have had to bring somebody else in, make Jerry Krause, but he allowed Jerry Krause, who really was a great architect of a team, but had one mortal flaw that we all have. He was too doggone arrogant and didn't realize his place in the whole thing. And he didn't realize who the true king of that was, and that was MJ.
Well, I think a lot of it too, the ego thing plays a huge role. Once you get to that level, and the ego, right? I mean, you can't. That just kind of gets in the way of those people. I mean, it's hard for me to relate because I'm just just an average, below average person. But when you get to that level, I just have a feeling that the ego plays. The money obviously is a huge thing, but the ego also is a big one.
Yep. Well, and then how naive is Reinsdorf saying Krause could have rebuilt another championship team in 2 to 3 years? You saw the look on Michael's face when he said that. It's like, right. Okay, wait a second. I mean, because right after the Bulls came the Lakers era again, right, with Kobe and Shaq, and they kind of took off. I mean, he just totally naive to think that Krause could have built another championship team in a couple years.
No, he didn't have Michael Jordan. He wasn't doing.
Didn't have Michael. Did not have Michael. No.
Well, on that, this is the end of I'm sure it's going to come, because this is part of the lexicon now. We don't have a lot of live sports, but I'm actually going to switch it up. I was going to do a different topic, but I do want to know topic number 3: live sports. There were 2 live sporting events. I'm going to admit I didn't watch either. I saw a little bit of the highlights on SportsCenter. There was a live golf pro-am, or they called it a skins game for charity, raising over $5.5 million for charity. Great cause. And then there was NASCAR yesterday. Danny, Brian, did either of you watch either of those things as we come into a new world where we watch sports where no one else is watching it in front of them?
The golf was definitely on the entire time in my house yesterday, but I don't understand how they do it, because the 2 best players in the world, Dustin Johnson and Rory McIlroy, were both on the same team. I'm like why? How? Why don't they make it even and put one on one and one on the other? They were losing the whole time, but they came back and won at the end. But I'm like, okay, those are the two best players right now in the world, right? I mean, they're two of the top 3, 4, 5 players, right, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is that when you get to that level where these guys, where it's all an even game. I mean, it was just what I thought was kind of cool about it. And again, it was on at my house up until we went to a birthday party. I did not get a chance to watch the NASCAR, but I got to see some highlights. But on the golf, I mean, it was cool that, I mean, they're all carrying their own bags. They're using rangefinders.
Right.
You know, I mean, it was just like 4 guys out playing golf followed by a camera. But those guys were incredibly good at golf. It wasn't nearly exciting as a tournament is on Sunday, but I'll tell you, it was really cool to see golf on the screen again and see these guys playing. And as a fan, I loved it. But it wasn't nearly as exciting as.
But it was something.
Yeah, it was something. That's
We
exactly.
got to watch something.
That's exactly
Absolutely.
right.
Something's better than nothing. And that's part of the world right now is we have to choose which things we find enjoyment in.
Right.
And if you want to, you just have to. And so those things were on there. Now let's move on to some of our meat of the topics. So in a different world right now, I've been dialoguing with multiple restaurants in the last week and helping them make decisions as they're reopening their dining rooms, as they're trying to figure out how do they do social distancing. They read the CDC guidelines, they read their local and state guidelines, and they're trying to figure it out. And one of the discussions has been, how do you, the face mask issue. And so I'm going to put a first caveat on this. If you're interested in it, email me at nmanahan. There's a great podcast. The face mask thing, I don't think we really have no idea, but it's now social norm that everybody wears a face mask when they go out. But you can't eat with the face mask on. But I was noticing, I was talking to one local restaurant here, is they took a vote and of their employees of what makes them feel the safest. And it was that at every point, unless they were taking a drink of water, a drink of something, or eating, that their customers were wearing face masks. And that was one way. Another is, no, we're going to separate it so much. We're going to make sure our employees are fully wearing face masks, but we're not going to require or even encourage face masks for any of the customers. And I know this is uncharted territory for all of us, and we're trying to figure it out. Here in Indianapolis, our mayor came out and said, okay, we're not going to open the dining rooms yet. We're just going to open the outdoor patios starting this Friday. So do you wear face masks just on the patios when you're open and if that goes well, then they're open for another week. We have all these things that are changing and people are thinking about it. Gentlemen, as you think about face masks and how that works, what do you think for restaurants specifically? How would you coach some of our restaurateurs that are part of the PayProTec family?
I mean, I think right now, you know, guys, I'm surprised that face masks is even in the conversation at a restaurant, right? I mean, it's just so unrealistic. I'm not going to sit at a table and put my face mask up between each bite and between each drink. It's just not going to happen. I think, yeah, I mean, like you were kind of going at, Nate, is separating the tables more, right? Keeping people away from each other more, having the wait staff having masks on. I mean, because I think, you know, it's really about protecting other people from yourself, right? And so I don't know. But then also, like, you know, these restaurants trying to implement, you know, these order at the table options to where you don't really need a waiter or waitress to come stand right above you and take your order. I definitely think that that's something a lot of restaurants are looking at considering. I think the mask thing is a little overkill in my opinion, especially when you get into a restaurant environment. On a side note, my wife and her mother went and nail salons opened in Colorado. I think it was last week. And they went and got pedicures on Sunday morning. And they have, you know, these salons have chairs just right next to each other. And they had them separated 2 chairs in between each person. So they were like 25% open roughly. And they had, you know, sneeze shields or barriers set up. So they went together to kind of have a little bit of a girls' day now that the salons were open. Couldn't even talk to her, weren't even sitting close to each other. There's barriers in between them. They said it was pretty awkward, but they got their nails done. So there's that.
Well, and sometimes a little bit of, here's what I've been saying to restaurant owners. And comes from Danny Meyer, who Union Hospitality Group founded Shake Shack, several amazing restaurants in Manhattan. And Danny always says the first thing as a restaurateur is you've got to take care of your employees first and make sure they feel confident and safe and taken care of and loved, and that will reciprocate back to the customers. And obviously you make sure that they then treat the customers the way you're treating them. And so one of the things I said to is you've got to take a poll, like, because right now, I just saw some chats from some of our family here saying I won't ever wear a face mask, and I understand that sentiment. But right now, I personally don't believe that face masks actually prevent, and I think they actually may be risky. I'm reading the data. The data's still coming in, but I've been reading some of the scientific articles. I'm part of, my brother-in-law and sister are both medical doctors, and they've been helping me. I kind of read through it. But it's not a big difference whether you wear it or not. And right now, sociologically and psychologically, there are some people that are very fearful, but they also know that they need to have the job. And so you have to go to your employees and say, okay, what can we possibly do to make you feel the safest? Because if they feel the safest, they're going to treat your customers the safest. And there are lots of things you have to do, but you have to start thinking through that, because if you don't start treating your employees well, it's going to be hard for you to reopen well. And if you give bad customer service now, let me tell you, they ain't coming back. When you're already taking the risk, going in to eat, whatever that risk is for you, and you're going to sit at a table, if you get poor customer service, I'm pretty sure that restaurant's going to go down on your list.
Absolutely.
Brian, when you're talking to your many restaurants there in Warsaw that you help with their payments and all their needs, what are they thinking about reopening, and what do you see as things that they're thinking about when it has to protecting their employees and their customers?
Okay, so and again, you're right. I have asked a lot of my merchants, restaurant owners, and the answer that I've gotten has been consistent with all of them, and that is they're going to do what the governor requires them to do. And no more and no less. So I take that as a lot of all of them. They're not on board with the whole face mask thing, and neither am I. And again, I understand that we have to be safe and we have to be smart and the whole thing. But until there's a consistent way, and I don't think I'm not sure if there ever will be. But for example, like when you go to the grocery store, and I use that example all the time. And people are in there, some of them with masks, some of them without masks. But then you look at the guy, in the fruit section, picking up the apples. He looks at one, doesn't like it, puts it back. Picks up the other one, doesn't like it, puts it back. Looks at another one, and I just don't think that there's any consistency at all. I'm not sure how you can be consistent. I don't get it. I just think that, and again, from the restaurant owners that I've talked to, they're just going to do what the governor tells them to do and whatever is mandated by our state. And I'm not sure if I blame them because, again, a lot of people, the whole thing with buffets. One of my restaurants is a buffet guy, and I think buffets are something that I don't know. I mean, how is that going to happen? The one of the top 10 things to do in Las Vegas. I've never done it, but is to eat at the Bellagio buffet. Right? It's like that's one of the top 10 things on the list of things to do, and they have world-renowned chefs there. I mean, it's just an amazing thing. How's that happening? What are they going to do?
I don't think buffets open until mid 2021.
Well, on a smaller scale, something like Ruby Tuesdays, what are they going to do? I mean, their whole thing is a salad bar, right? I mean, that's why people go there, is to eat the salad bar. A lot of these Mexican places here in Warsaw, a lot of those are my merchants. I mean, what are they going to do? So, again, from what I've heard from these restaurant owners, they're going to just do whatever the governor tells them to do that is mandated by the state.
It is a different world. And I would say just for all restaurant owners and those of us who are coaching restaurant owners, these are sensitive and personal things. So, one of our users says we're separating the tables more. It's up to the customers if they want to wear a mask at the tables. But each one, I would say these are personal decisions. You start with what your local and state government is mandating, and then you move to finding out where the right lane is. And as the data continues to tell, we're going to figure out some of this stuff. We just don't know. The reason this is called a novel coronavirus is because it's new, and we just have to figure some of that out, but not live in fear. Live one very wise step after another wise step and keep moving forward. And that's just what we've got to do. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to transition us to our number 5 topic today. We've been going through our series. Last week we did 4 of them. We're walking through the process, selling with integrity. The last thing we talked about was making that proposal and how do you do that. But when you give a proposal and you tell them this is what it'll cost, this is what services we can provide, this is how much we will save you, this is the hardware they use, you've been through a demo, you've done all these things. Now it's time to get to how reason all this is put together. You've got to ask for the business. You've got to actually ask them to do business with you. Gentlemen, you guys have been doing this for a long time. What are the important parts of asking for the business and making sure we don't just leave the proposal out there and hope that they stick, that, some point they respond to us?
Again, I think in sales, it all comes down to the same thing. When you get to that point where, you've done the proposal, you've done the analysis, you've been in to talk to the merchant 2-3 times, whatever it is. You've done the demo with the POS team, whatever it is. I just think, again, asking open-ended questions, leaving it to where the merchant is actually going to tell you. Even if it's like, hey, okay, so now what's next? What's next? Right? I don't think that's a bad line at all, because again, it's an open-ended question. It's not a yes or a no, and it enables the merchant then to talk to you. And if you can do that, again, it's something simple as what's next, where do we go from here, that kind of a thing. I think it's a win.
I love that.
I think it's about continuing to drive the conversation forward, right? Like, just like Brian's saying, once you get to that point that you've got the package laid out and everything sounds good, it's what's next. And that's, instead of leaving it there and letting them make a decision and thinking about it. I think I said this last week, so I probably jumped ahead of this topic, Nate. But that's one of the most important parts is you got to ask for the sale, and I think a lot of salespeople fail at that because they kind of position the package, let the merchant think about it for a little bit, and come back to them. Which there's nothing wrong with the merchant. Hey, okay, let me just review this and get my head wrapped around it before we move forward. That's fine. But then there's got to be a lot of follow-up where you're continuing to ask about moving forward and when can we set up a time to do the application. I think that's really where you've got to drive it home. You've got to ask for that sale. You can't just present it and then wait for them to make a decision. This is where, salespeople need to drive it and ask those questions and really kind of create a timeline for the next steps.
Because the thing is, if you don't do that, then I mean, are you really selling anything? You're just you're waiting, right? And right. Again, I mean, I've gotten phone calls before saying, yeah, let's go for it, let's go do it. But I think those are few and far between. And I guess it depends on the person. But you're leaving it to chance if you do that. When you leave it to chance, you're going to be disappointed more than you are elated. I can tell you that.
Well, I love that answer. I think what's next? I think let's talk a little bit about follow-up. Obviously, you ask for that when you give the proposal, but it's a continuous ask. And so a lot of times we'll call it scarcity. We want to create that fear of the deal going away. Sometimes we do have real deadlines. How do you follow up? So whether you're person to person, after you make that proposal, you ask for their business, they say, let me think about this for a couple days. How do you follow up? What's the best way? And are there things you add to the conversation as you follow up to kind of make the offer a little more relevant to them?
That's a great question. I'm not really sure what the answer is, other than I guess it depends on the relationship with the merchant too. And every relationship is different. Some are lower hanging fruit than others. So you're a little bit more comfortable with some of the things you can say to that merchant, like, what did I do wrong? You know what I mean? I mean, like, I'm not sure that's something that you want to ask all merchants, but if you have a relationship with the person where you're talking to them like you're talking to like the three of us are talking, I have no problem asking him that. But I just think it's a case by case basis, Nate, and I think that you're going to fall on your face. And you're just going to have to pick yourself back up and just read the room. I mean, it all comes down to the same thing.
I wonder for guys, so one of the things I think about is like when you follow up, you don't leave a couple bullets in the gun, for a lack of better term. I probably should come up with a better metaphor. But when you make that proposal and you do the ask, don't give them everything. Leave something out that you can tell. So one of the things I think of, maybe you send them some testimonies if you have it of other customers who have used that solution. Tips and tricks of how that solution would help you and what that saved you time with. Continue adding value. Hey, I know you're a restaurant and maybe it's some like the reopen guide and you're saying, hey, I've thought about this. Have you thought about, I saw this restaurant doing the face mask this way. Are you interested in doing that? Adding things back into the conversation, one that shows you are interested fully in their success as a restaurant, and two, helping them start seeing themselves using that piece of hardware, specifically in the POS world, but also in just the regular payments world to get that work done. Because you want to continue the conversation, and then you have to make sure, every 3 to 7 different contacts that you're having with them, whether it's email, text messages, little voicemails that you're leaving them. I really, these guys know that I love the little online videos and sending it so they see you and talk to you, and actually you get a little bit of a quote unquote eye contact, but you're making sure that they know that you're there for them. Danny, are there anything interesting? You deal with so many of our wonderful and successful partners out there. Any of them that are anything tips and tricks that you're seeing from people of how they follow up after they do that initial ask to make sure that the idea and the offer is at top of mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Nate, I love the mention of, kind of hold some things back or keep them in your back pocket and don't use them until you need to. And that's like, I talk with partners often about like the no termination fee ability, right? So on any merchant, our partners have the ability to put a merchant in a no contract. I don't think that that's something that you should lead in, right? I think, eliminating processing fees, providing a more robust point of sale system, better support should really be at the core. And if that doesn't do it, and let me take some time to think about it. Okay, if you sign up today, I've got the ability to waive your contract, right? Put you in a month-to-month agreement. You're not locked into anything. So you can kind of use that. And I agree, not just that, but that's just an idea of ways that you can really kind of position the package to be even more appealing to make them want to make a decision now. And you're trying to do that without being too pushy and letting these merchants, I mean, a lot of this we have to remember are big changes, right? Getting into new systems, getting into new programs, working with a new company. It's we try to make it as seamless as possible, but it is a shift in their business and they have to have a little bit of a learning curve as they get used to all this new things. So can't be pushy and kind of get them out of their comfort zone and kind of think that they're being backed against a wall. I also think, whenever someone needs to take some time, speak to their significant other, talk to their staff or their management team, anything like that, you still want to set specific times to follow up with them. So say you meet with them on a Tuesday and they say, okay, just give me a day or two to think this over. No problem. How about I follow up with you Wednesday at 3:00? Sound good? And so you're really kind of, and maybe at that point, if everything's good, we can move forward with the application. So you're really kind of setting a timeline and kind of creating some specific times that a merchant's going to, okay, I'm going to have a decision. I'm going to have to be ready to move forward. And that I think helps. If you kind of leave it open-ended, the whole thing's open-ended.
I think, making sure, putting some deadlines to it sometime. Last question on this topic. How do you encourage people to say, hey, putting a deadline? Because obviously you want to do business whenever. Sometimes there's a natural deadline. Maybe the promotion is being run. That deal is going to run out, and so you can do that. but how do you make sure that sense of urgency that is so successful across all sides of sales, especially online sales? But hey, if you don't get this now, it's going to run out. Where really a lot of times it's just a lie. So I'm very skeptical in using the lies to say it. But how do you use deadlines or urgency to help them make those decisions? And when do you choose to use it? Brian, do you ever use it?
You know what? I don't.
Yeah.
And the reason that I don't is because, Nate, I think you're right. I just think it sounds like you're being too pushy, like you're trying too hard to get the deal. Again, knowing the room, asking open-ended questions, it's the same thing. It comes down to the same thing. I just think if you start with, you know what, we're running a contest or this, that, I just think that, again, it's just one of those things that you just have to be careful that you don't sound like you're being like aluminum siding before and after, right? The Tin Men. You ever watch that movie? I talked about it last week. Hey, you want to be the before, or you want to be the after, right? And so I just think you just have to again know the room, develop the relationship, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but I don't think putting a deadline or a timeline on anything is it's just not my style.
I agree. I think people can kind of read the BS more than anything in a deadline type of approach. I do know that a lot of like call centers will use that, especially when you're offering things like free placements. So like free placements of equipment and things like that, you've got a little bit more leverage to use some type of deadline. Like, this is a special we're running for the next, 5 business days. You got to take advantage of it now because it won't be available. And that's something that you can leverage. But I agree with you, Nate and Brian. I don't think it's a great tactic to use in the majority of situations. And it's, you've got to find other ways to create urgency other than a deadline. Because then, those merchants feel like they're backed into a corner. They got to make a decision now. Is it right for me? Well, I don't have time to decide and actually think it through. And I don't think it's fair to the customer.
Well, as we close up our week, we're going to have a great week here on the High Five. Several special guests coming in the later half of the week. We're going to be having some great conversations. We would love your feedback. Thanks for those who are commenting with us and joining us live this morning, and those who are watching afterwards and hung all the way to the end. We love it when you do. So please keep feedback coming. I got several text messages and messages over the weekend of people who had made some interesting things. In fact, one of these, the topic about the mask was actually a partner asking some questions too. So I thought, man, I've talked to merchants and partners, and we're starting to think about it. So we're going to give you our best vision and best ideas. So as we get ready here, gentlemen, our closing words. Let me bring up a little music, get you guys up there on the screen, get Danny's lower third off. All right, gentlemen, it's Monday. It's time to get our groove on.
Let's go.
All right, there we go. Don't hit the button twice. So, Brian Linke, what do you say as you're back at 929 East Center Street to make this the greatest May week of all? May the 18th, we are ready to roll. Are you ready to pump everyone up?
9 selling days left in the month of May. All right, you have 5 this week, you got 4 next week. So it doesn't give you a lot, but 9 selling days, get excited about it. Go sell those deals, and we're here to help you.
All right, and Mr. Danny Shard, what say you?
Good to see Brian Linke back in the office. We've got Jason Lee Cook and some of our Colorado folks going to be making it in this week, and things are starting to feel a little bit back to normal. I hope you all are too. And like Brian said, 9 days left in the month. Things are picking up. Get out and take advantage of it, and let's go sell something. Have a great week.
All right. Let's do it, guys. Everybody, thank you for watching. We will see you tomorrow, 10 a.m.-ish every day on the Facebook, on the YouTube, wherever you want to watch us, we are there. If you want us to send a carrier pigeon with all the transcripts, we'll even do that if you ask. We're here. Thank you so much, and let's do it, High Five Nation. See you guys later. The High Five, yeah.